In solving algebraic equations containing fractions, I will assume that you're already familiar with solving algebraic equations that do not contain fractions. On the first problem, we want to get rid of the negative 3/7. So we put a positive 3/7 underneath. You do the same on the other side of the equal sign. Draw a line and bring everything down. The x comes down, the equal sign. Denominators are the same, so when we add, of course we keep the denominator, and we just add the numerators. On the next problem, we'll want to get rid of the negative 4/5, so we put a positive 4/5 underneath. But over here, I wouldn't have common denominators. So instead of writing 4/5 as 4/5, since I want a common denominator, I want a denominator of 15. So to get from 5 to 15, I multiply by 3, multiply by 3. Now I have common denominators. And essentially, I added 4/5. I added 4/5. This just looks different, but that's the value. This would simplify to 4/5. Now we bring down the x, the equal sign. Of course, we keep that denominator. 2 and 12 gives us 14. Looking at this one, we want to get rid of the 3/4. It's held by multiplication. The opposite operation is division. When you divide by a fraction, you flip it and multiply. So this will be times 4/3. You go to the other side of the equal sign, times 4/3. These will always cancel. 4 goes into 4 once, 3 goes into 3 once, 3 goes into 3 once. So I'm not going to bother saying that much. A drops down, the equal sign. And here nothing will cancel, so we just multiply 8/15. Looking at this problem, you'll want to get rid of the 1/10 and also this 6. It's actually a negative 6, and there's a 1 in front of the r if nothing's written there. So the r can sit up top, or it could sit on the side. First, we'll get rid of this 1/10. It's a positive 1/10. So underneath it, we'll put a negative 1/10. Do the same on the other side of the equal. We'll just draw a line and bring everything down. That's a 0. Don't have to write it. I'm going to write this as negative 1/6 with r on the side, just because for me it's a little bit easier to read that way. And here the signs are the same, so we add. And it gives us negative 4/10. I'm just going to leave it in this form, although I could reduce that. We want to get rid of the negative 1/6. It's held by multiplication. So we're going to divide by a negative 1/6, which is to say we're going to multiply by negative 6/1. Do the same to the other side. Negative times negative is positive. The 6's cancel. You're left with r. Negative times negative is positive. We can do a little canceling. Common factor of 2. Divide by 2 leaves you with 3. Divide by 2 leaves you with 5. Multiply straight across. This is 12/5. Or, this is simplified, but you could also write it as a mixed number, 2 and 2/5. We want to get rid of the 3. In general, when working with algebraic equations that have fractions, you want all fractions. So I'm going to write the 3 as 3 over 1. 3 over 1 is held by multiplication, so I'll divide by 3 over 1, which is to say I'll multiply by 1/3. So I'll multiply by 1/3. 3 cancels 3, you're left with y. Here nothing will cancel, so it's negative 4/15. This problem is similar to this one in that we change this whole number to a fraction. I'm going to change this mixed number to a fraction. So that's 21, make that 25 over 7. It's negative. Bring down the x, the equals, and the 5. I'm going to make that 5 over 1. So now I have all fractions. To get rid of this negative 25/7, it's held by multiplication, so we'll divide, which means we'll flip it and multiply, or take the reciprocal. Negative 7/25 times a negative 7/25. Negative times negative is positive. The 25s cancel. The 7s cancel. So we just bring down the x. We can simplify here. Divide by 5. Divide by 5. So it'll be a negative 7/5. So x is negative 7/5, or a negative 1 2/5. Looking at this problem, we want all fractions. So k over 7, I'll put the 1 in front of the k. This k has a 1 in front of it if nothing's written. I would like a denominator of 7, so I'm going to write this 1 as 7 over 7. The 4 is what I'm going to get rid of first. It's a positive 4, so I'll put negative 4 underneath it. But rather than write negative 4 over here, I want a denominator of 3. So somehow I'm going to write this negative 4 as negative something over 3. I put negative 4 on this side. I put what's equivalent to a negative 4 on this side with the denominator of 3. So to have this equivalent to 4, I need 3 times 4, or 12 in the numerator. So again, negative 12/3 is just a strange way of writing 4. But now I have common denominators. We'll bring everything down. 7/7, negative 1/7 gives us 6/7 k. Bring down the equal. Notice the larger value is negative, so this will be a negative 12 subtract 2 is 10. We want to get rid of 6/7. It's held by multiplication, so we divide. So we multiply by the reciprocal. Everything cancels here, so you're left with 1k. We can reduce before multiplying. Common factor of 2. When you divide by 2, you're left with 3. Divide by 2, you're left with 5. And now we have negative 35/9. This can also be written as negative 3 8/9. Looking at this one, if I have a 1 in front of the r, it'll look more like a fraction. Since I have an r on this side and this r is all tangled up, I'm going to get rid of 1/15 r. It's positive, so I'll put negative 1/15 r underneath. Same on the other side of the equal. So I'm going to be subtracting this from each side, but I'm going to need to combine these two like terms and they don't have common denominators. So let's address that. Common denominator would be 12. So I would multiply by 2, multiply by 2. To get 4 to 12, you would multiply by 3, multiply by 3. So this is 9/12 minus 10/12. That's negative 1/12. I'll emphasize that positive 1/15 r, negative 1/15 r. This gives you a 0, so you don't have to write it. On this side of the equal, subtract 1 from 8. You're left with 7/15 r. You want to get rid of the 7/15. It's held by multiplication, so you divide by 7/15, which is to say you multiply by 15 over 7. Multiply by 15 over 7. Here everything's going to cancel. You'll be left with r. But over here you have a common factor of 3. Divide by 3. Divide by 3. So you're left with r. Negative 5/28. Looking at this one, I want all fractions. Denominator of 4, I'll put the 1 in front of the y. The 1 that's in front of this y, I'm going to write as 4 over 4. That way I have common denominators. So we'll combine like terms on this side. This will leave us with negative 3/4 y. This side will leave us with negative 3/9. Bring down the equal. You want to get rid of the negative 3/4. It's held by multiplication, so we divide by negative 3/4, which is to say we multiply by negative 4/3, and we multiply by negative 4/3. Negative times negative is positive. You can cancel. Divide by 3, divide by 3 leaves you with a 1 and a 1. So we have 4/9. Over here, everything canceled out, and you're just left with y. So that's our answer. Looking at number 10, this is the last one we'll solve. I can combine these two like terms. I want to get rid of the 1/4, so I'll put negative 1/4 underneath, which means I want something that's equivalent to a negative 1/4 over here, but I want a common denominator. Looking at 4 and 10, the common denominator is going to be 20. To get from 4 to 20, multiply by 5, multiply by 5. So negative 1/4 is the same as negative 5/20. Now just to emphasize, this is still a 10, so I would need to multiply by 2 and multiply by 2. So 7x negative 10x leaves us with negative 3x, but I'll write that as negative 3 over 1 x. Bring down the equal. Our common denominator is 20. Six twentieths is positive. 5/20 is negative. So we're left with a positive 1/20. We want to get rid of the negative 3 over 1, so it's held by multiplication, so we will divide, which means we'll flip it and multiply. Negative 1/3. So times negative 1/3. Over here, negative times negative is positive. The 3's cancel. You're left with x. Nothing will cancel here, so it's negative 1/60. If you'd like some practice with these concepts, at my website I have 2 worksheets, each with a detailed answer key.